Music Online UK.
Blues in the Attic by Nikki Iles is an excellent choice for those doing Grade 3 ABRSM piano who have a strong sense of rhythm. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you some of the things that the examiner will be looking out for so that you can get the best possible mark in your exam. Now, first of all, notice that it says funky straight quavers, not swing quavers, as often occurs in some of the more modern pieces in the ABRSM exams. So swing quavers would be however, these are straight quavers, where all quavers are the same length. A different type of rhythm. Now I would like to turn your attention to bar 7. Do you see what seems to be a misprint in the ABRSM book? The triplet quavers at the end of the bar would mean that the right-hand part of this bar has only 3.5 beats and the piece is in 4/4 time. When I first noticed this, I decided to phone the ABRSM to let them know it was a misprint, or so I first thought. Within a few hours they got back to me stating that the part was in fact correct. The digit 3 under the group of quavers was actually a fingering, not a triplet marking. Well, the notation here is at least ambiguous, so much so that I'm sure many would read it as a triplet. Indeed, the #1 result in a YouTube search for this piece at the time of posting this, a channel I would not recommend, by the way, for students looking for good example performances, plays this 3-quaver group as a triplet. However, we now have it on good authority that they are just 3 normal quavers, and so in fact there is no misprint. As a guide for the future, I decided to look through other pieces from the syllabus and found that all other triplet markings are in fact in a different typeface, that is, italicized. So if you ever want to know if a digit is a fingering or some kind of tuplet, fingerings are always in normal typeface and tuplets are always in an italic typeface. Another thing to be aware of, subtle rhythmic changes, bar 8 has a very similar relative right at the end of the piece, bar 28. But the rhythms are slightly different. You'll notice that in bar 8 you have 2 crotchets and then 2 quavers immediately afterwards. In bar 28 you have 2 crotchets, then a quaver rest before the last 2 notes. Now you might be tempted to play bar 28 with the same rhythm as bar 8 because you sort of relate the two together because of the chords used at the beginning. And then bar 28 you might want to play, but it should be with a little rest before the last 2 notes. Now, another thing that the examiner will be looking out for is your tonal control. So, notice in bar 2 we have a long dotted minim A that goes over the bar and the chords are underneath it. You need to be able to make sure that that A is heard whilst you're playing the chords underneath. Can you still hear the A? You don't want to play the chords too loudly so that they obliterate the A. It's tempting with syncopated rhythms to hit them a little bit harder, But in this case, the A needs to be heard at the end of the phrase. Later on in the piece, we have an instruction to play it more relaxed, and you need to bring down the dynamic level, and also you need to bring down the tempo of the piece. Can you feel it's more chilled out at that point? Not only in dynamic level, but also in the tempo. Then, to demonstrate your tonal control, in bar 15, we have a very quick crescendo from mezzo piano all the way up to forte in the space of one bar. You need to be able to make that crescendo happen and be noticeable. Again, in bar 16, we have some very specific articulation. There are 4 chords, identical chords in the right hand, but they have different articulations. The first one has a staccato, the next one is long, the third one has a tenuto mark, so that is also long, and the fourth one staccato. Now the last 2 need particular attention. You have 2 quavers, and you might just want to play them identical to each other, but you need to make the first one longer than the second one. Can you hear the difference? Instead of both the same. It's a very subtle difference, but those little things will get you extra marks in the exam. And finally, I'd like to point out to you a couple of long notes that might be easy to miss. Now, let's go back to those 3 quaver upbeats. At the beginning, there was no left hand underneath that 3 quaver upbeat. When we get to bar 25, you'll notice that there is a long tied note in the left hand underneath that 3 quaver upbeat. The left hand is still holding on. The same happens in bar 28. Can you hear that left hand is still hanging on? Now, it might be tempting to let go of it, and later on in bar 28, that would be incorrect. Make sure those left hand notes that are tied stay on. And later on, and that is how to play Blues in the Attic by Nikki Iles.